Anyway, I'm going to get started here, and maybe first off, I'm just going to introduce the panel. I'm really excited today that we've got Sanjeev Bhatia from Clinic Accelerator, and something I just learned that we also have Raj Suppiah from PT. He's the founder or co-founder, I should say, of Foundation Physio. But these two gentlemen actually have known each other for 15 years and used to work together at LifeMark in a previous life, I'll say. Um, but there's just an incredible wealth of knowledge that we have on between these two gentlemen on running clinics, analyzing statistics, and helping the clinics both operate more efficiently and, more importantly, probably grow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over now to Sanjeev, who's going to run this session, and I'm going to just drop in with and try to answer some questions and help on maybe the reports that are in Juvonno that could complement some of these topics that we're going to touch on. So again, I appreciate it, Sanjeev, and thank you all for joining us this morning.
Yeah, no problem. And maybe I'll throw it to you, Raj, just give a little bit, just like 30 seconds, a little bit more background on yourself.
Yeah, like Terry mentioned, a long time ago, I started my career with LifeMark. Co-founded my passion now is obviously running my business. Co-founded Foundation Physiotherapy in 2011. Through the grinds, lots of metrics. We built our business up to 6 locations in Toronto. We have a little consulting arm to our business as well. We manage clinics for other companies. And then myself, I'm also a business coach for clinic owners. So love everything about this profession. Love to have to give back in many ways.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, we're definitely going to pick your brain a lot. And myself, I was a physio, like 20 years ago now, but I shaved, so maybe it doesn't look like it, but and then I treated it only for like a very short time, like about a year, and then I moved on to the business side very quickly. So with Raj at LifeMark, I was there 10 years, a company called Myo Detox for a year, and then now a coaching community for owners and a staff training through Clinic Accelerator. So this is one of my favorite topics, okay? Like how are we looking at metrics and then making like actionable change, okay? And actually, to everybody in attendance, I want to appeal to your like clinical brain, because that really helped me. When I was a physio, like I'm trained to do, like you take measurements, you do test, retest, you look at data, okay, and then you change the treatment plan or the home exercise plan. When I start working on the business side, they would teach you like, okay, this SWOT analysis or this analysis. And I was like, okay, wait a second. Like really what they're doing is SOAP note. Like they're taking the objective, then you talk about the subjective, and then you assess what's going on and come up with a plan. So I did great on the business side because I just kept my clinical critical thinking, and I was just basically, okay, how do we change the home exercise plan for the clinic instead of a patient? Okay, so I want everybody on the call to like keep your clinical hat on because it's going to help quite a bit. Okay, and we did a survey, and a couple of things really jumped out. Okay, how often do you analyze your practice performance metrics? So most people are looking at them. 46% are looking at them weekly. Did that surprise you, Terry?
A little bit. I actually thought it would have been even more frequently than that. I would, I like looking at data on a more regular basis personally, but I understand that, as a practitioner, if you're running the clinic and working in the clinic, time is of the essence. So maybe weeklies make sense. I don't know. How about yourselves? Would you look at it more often or less often than that?
Yeah, what are you thinking, Raj, when you see something like this?
Yeah, I think what I like to put is I can be in most of the people on this call in their shoes. Like I am a running the business, but I've been at the point where I was running the business and also a clinician like 6 days a week, right? I was treating like 15 clients a day, 6 days a week. That's how we built up our practice. I still treat 2 days a week, 10 hours a week, but so I can see why it is difficult, Terry, for most clinicians to be checking regularly. I would say there's certain metrics I check daily and certain metrics I check weekly. There's different metrics I check at different points that's valuable based on when I have to convert that data into action, right?
Yeah.
So something
Yeah.
like revenue, I track weekly. Something like new clients, I actually track daily, like how many new clients we're getting per clinic. Something like marketing, I might track more monthly, just because you also get better data over a month, then you can put that into action. So I think it depends on obviously what data you're tracking, but there should be some metric that's being looked on daily, to Terry's point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like it really depends on the data you're looking at, like what you said. For me, just in general, I like to look at like the clinic data weekly because I find, again, I'm wearing my hat as a clinician. Like, say you looked at a patient, you only met with them once a month and you did some measurements, like how much are you really going to be able to implement change looking at something once a month? So there's certain metrics, like fundamental ones, which we're going to talk about today, that I think you have to look at weekly, right? And then pretty much the topic of today is like, can you take that data and turn it into action? So what's your biggest challenge? And this is where we want to spend most of our time. And I think you, Raj, you just mentioned this one, like, hey, I don't have the time to take action. Okay. Have you heard that? Hey, type in the chat yes or no if you heard that from the patient before. Hey, have you done your home exercises? Oh, I didn't have the time. All right. Okay. Well, this should be a lot of yeses, I think, in the chat. Okay. But yeah, so I don't have the time, or hey, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm looking at this metric, but how do I take action on it? Okay, so these two I think are very typical. Over 50% don't have the time or are not sure how to take action. So we want to focus on this today, right? Like how to take action on the metrics we're going to be talking about today. Okay. So maybe everybody in the chat, give me a score out of 10 if that makes sense to you. It's okay that we talk about what metrics, but that's only half the equation. We got to move to, hey, what do you do? Okay, the assessment and the plan part. Okay, and just make sure your drop down is set to your chat drop down is set to everyone. I see some 10s coming into the chat, but you might not be able to see on your side if your drop down set to host or panelist. Okay, okay, so everybody's on the same page. Okay, all right, let's jump to fueling your financial growth. So this is just going to kind of set the framework for the next like 20 minutes or so. One thing, when I start working with an owner and their team, I'm sure, Terry, you see this in the Juvonno like features and functionalities. I'm sure you focus on this, Raj, is like when you're talking about growth, financial growth, you got to look at the fundamentals first. Okay, not something shiny new. There's a lot of shiny new diamonds out there, okay, that people can do all the time. You're getting sent, oh, this clinic owner is doing this, or here's a new system you should do, or here's a new marketing tactic you can do. And I find a lot of people jump to those shiny diamonds, but for real growth, you have to check your fundamental process and systems first. I actually call them operational leaks. Okay. So Raj, what's something like fundamental? Hey, this is just part of running clinics. We got to check it every day, every week, or whatever it is. Like we have to check it and make sure it's working properly. What metric or system comes to mind?
I mean, like for sure, like certain things like um accounts receivable, right? Like
Yes.
you can track like you can track like, oh yeah, I'm booked, I'm busy, but then if you're not collecting accounts receivable, that money's not in your bank. So I think that's an operational leak, and that there's probably an administrative issue there that has to happen. And we've seen that happen in some of our clinics. People go on vacation, they forget to collect AR and it doesn't catch up, and then AR is just sitting there. And if we don't look at that metric enough, you kind of get this heightened sense of security because you're saying, oh, revenues are booking's good, but on the other side, we're not getting the money in. So that's a big operational leak. I think that happens, my personal experience, but I see clinics go through as well.
100%. And again,
Yeah.
that's why you want to look at it weekly, right?
Yeah,
Like if you're only
exactly.
looking at AR monthly, it's like 4 weeks of damage have gone by. And then you want to make change and look at it another 4 weeks later, right?
Yeah.
Maybe hit us with another one. I like the AR one for sure. Like you don't want your money not to be right. That's going to hurt.
I think
Right?
something else actually that I've looked at is this new client to revenue data as well. Like, there are weeks where we'll see like new clients like significantly going up or staying the same, which looks good, but the revenue's not actually increasing, right? And then you're like, what's happening? And then you actually look into it. It's actually like your total appointment hours are less, or your return client visits are less. And so that goes into a leak on the clinical side in which return patients aren't coming back. Yes, I'm getting a lot of new clients, but if I compare it to my revenue, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm losing patients. So it looks like every week I'm probably losing that same new patient that's coming in. And then
Something's not right.
I just become a new client leak essentially. So that's a huge operational leak on the clinical side that we see happen, which also becomes like a coaching event.
Yeah, that's a good one. I never thought about looking at that one, but like I may consider it now. I'm gonna check like after this call. And Terry, what do you see on the, like, what should people be accessing in Juvonno, like a report, like every week? Hey, this will show you if something's like fundamental is not right. What would you suggest?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of things that I was going to mention here, but and just to add to what Raj was saying. So in the chat, when we first started, I asked for people to put in what they're looking at, and most of the comments were sales related. I always thought, for me, looking at first the new patient statistics, because the more new patients you're driving will inherently drive revenue and growth. Now, based on what Raj just mentioned, there is that potential that maybe you are driving new patients, and you can see that the number of new patients coming in and that number is growing, but your revenue is not growing, and you have this leak where people are coming in for a single visit and dropping off. So then I'd be looking at survey results on satisfaction and PVA scores for the staff to see how once you get that person in the clinic, why aren't they coming back and repeating and finishing their treatment plans? Why are they dropping off so quickly? So I would suggest you start with the new patient report, see how many new patients, and making sure that metric's growing. And then to what Raj just said, is to start analyzing why your drop-offs are happening, and basically plugging that leak in your business to ensure that you're actually completing treatment plans and growing your revenue with those new clients, instead of just having an initial assessment and then never seeing them again.
Yeah, and those are just some examples of like fundamental things you have to check every week, right? No matter what. So that's our message. Like the people in the chat, you have to decide, hey, what are those fundamental processes where if I don't check them, if they're not right, they're gonna make or break me, right? And I usually use the analogy of like everybody has to take their garbage out every week, right? What happens if you don't take your garbage out? The house stinks.
Yeah.
More garbage
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, more garbage next week. The house stinks. So you want to ask questions like, and then you're gonna move outside of looking at the metric and move to like the assessment and the plan. Whose role is it? Okay, to do this every week. Are they overwhelmed? Are they complaining? Do we need a new bin? Do we need new garbage bags? Do I need to change the way I pay my kid like to do it? Right? Is allowance or something. And that's something you just check every week. So you guys gotta in the chat find those, I don't know, 5 or 7 or 8, maybe up to 10, not too many things like that will make or break you, right? And financially in the clinic. Okay. And then once those are optimized or those are running up to your satisfaction, you're still going to check them every week. Hey, what are those new things you can do to break a ceiling on your revenue? Like I'm a revenue guy, I just want to build a bigger pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like before we'll get into the details, but what comes to mind on something more advanced, Raj, like something new?
Like niche services, right? Or sub services. So if I'm looking at like, offering like a running program or something like that within physiotherapy, again, if I can fix those leaks, then I know I'm way more efficient on that specific program, and I can track those metrics better.
You,
So I think that's where you can look at like if I've got the base covered with my base product, my base service, then I can explain it to niche products and
yeah,
track those metrics on that side.
you got it. Just like a 1-2 punch, right? Do the
Yeah.
fundamentals, make sure they're working, and then hey, that frees you up to come up with new, innovative ways to grow revenue. Okay. And if type in the chat anybody like what would be an advanced way, right? The first thing that comes to mind is I think this is like more common now, but when Shockwave came out, like adding Shockwave to your clinic as a new intervention, new modality, right? It could be custom bracing, but there's a lot of other strategic growth things you can do, but not if you haven't done the fundamentals, okay, or not checking that. Okay.
I
So
think
saying
Alright.
even,
you're
sorry,
really
go ahead.
at this point, you're saying basically once you've maximized and you've got your schedule, full to whatever 99%, we're talking about adding on additional revenue streams now to grow. Is that how I understand it?
That's right. 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot you can do. Right. But the first thing I check, even when I start working at a clinic, I'll like crank call them. Like I start working with the owner, I'll literally just call them for like 30 days, get someone to crank call them. And if I find they answer 20 out of 30 calls, they have a revenue leak. They're not answering the phone enough. They're a 67% answer rate. Like, why am I going to be working with you on setting up concussion when you're not answering the phone?
Yeah.
So that's just an
That's
example of fundamental versus advanced. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So everybody in the chat, maybe give me a score out of 5 if that framework makes sense to you. Focus on the fundamentals, get those right, start doing the advanced stuff. Right. I see too many people doing advanced stuff first. Right. Okay. So we're going to get into these topics as well. How often do you review your KPIs? Which KPIs directly impact your bottom line? How do you turn? How do you turn into actionable growth strategies? Okay. So maybe Raj, take us through, like, if you can paint us a picture at your clinics. Is it just like how often do you meet to look at your metrics? Who's at that meeting?
Yeah.
What tool do you guys use? How long is that meeting? Like, can you paint us a picture?
Yeah, no, 100%. So metrics are done every Monday for the week before by the office manager slash client experience rep that's on the team. So it's their role to fill in. We have our own dashboard. Some of it comes off of Juvonno. Some of it has some other formulas that we use to get more hyper niche into what we're looking for. But the formulas are built out, the numbers are plugged in, and then every Monday, I meet with my directors for an hour reviewing metrics of the week before. And that's just looking at leaks, right? And we're looking clinic by clinic, like, hey, we've increased hours, available hours or more, but revenue hasn't changed. And then we dig deep into why that hasn't. And if that becomes like an actionable item around a therapist coaching performance or something like that, we go back to the clinic and we meet the clinic directors the week meeting after on a Monday. My Mondays are all meetings. And then we'd go to each clinic director and be like, this is your actionable item for the week to work on with this therapist. Or it's an AR issue. Like we're not like, why, what's happening is an AR issue. So we do review it with the directors every Monday. Mondays are pretty much my reporting day. And, that's kind of how my Mondays look. That it's communicating back downstream to the right people who are in charge of actioning that item.
And how long is that meeting? Like, sorry, is it 2 directors, 3 directors? Like, how many
It's
people
three
are in that meeting?
directors. It's 3 directors every Monday morning. And then we have so 3 of our operational directors, our top level directors every Monday morning. And then at the next level, where we're obviously multi-location. And then after that, it's all 6 clinic directors plus the 3 directors in another 1-hour meeting in which we're just plugging out some action items.
Okay. And for those of you in chat that don't have that level of org structure, like directors, like it's you. Like you're owner and director, okay? So like you gotta find the leaks and you gotta be the person that actually goes and implements, like closes that leak. Okay. Not everybody has that's kind of like such a big team. Mostly like it's the same person, the owner and the implementer, right? And so let's say I'm a director. Okay, so we meet and there's an issue. Like we looked at this clinician's last 5 assessments, and for the last 5 assessments last week, those patients only booked 1 session in advance. So what discussion would you have with me, the director, to meet with that clinician? How would that go?
Essentially, it would be like, like obviously we also encourage our clinic directors to meet with our, clinicians at least once every 2 weeks on some sort of touch point. And so then this becomes that touch point for the week. Hey, I noticed I noticed there seems to be a drop off on your, on your new assessments of the past week. What's going on? We do make everybody give out treatment plans so we can pull out the treatment plans and audit the treatment plans so we can go back and look at what those treatment plans look like. Is there issues in the type of patient that you're seeing or in the type of patient or the type of injury that's creating this problem, right? The clinic director is a clinician themselves, so they can talk around those issues and then come up with strategies, or maybe there's something going on in their life that they're not communicating enough. Well, you know, we got to find out what that issue is. And
Yeah.
then if there is higher level strategy just needed, the clinic director can come back to us at the director level to, you know, help with solutions. We try to work as a team, you know, and
Okay.
provide all solutions we can to address those issues.
Gotcha. And what do you think, like, Terry, like what's something that they should be looking at in that meeting? He's like, I think there's like a Juvonno report now that gives you a lot of data, like on the leaks.
I was going to say, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen
Yep.
and just touch on a couple of things. But one of the things that I just wanted to mention that struck me, and this is something, you know, obviously I've never worked in a clinic. I've helped clinics set up Juvonno and things, but one of the things that just resonated from what Raj said that I've noticed in clinics is that you really do need to set aside time to analyze these metrics and work on your business as opposed to always be working in the business. It'll only help you grow. So if you can see my screen right now, what I've done is, you know, these are typically how I like to set up the reports page for a Juvonno client so that they can see the key metrics really easily. And you know, what we're just talking about is running things like the new patients report. Right there, it's going to give you statistics on how many new patients you're seeing on a weekly, monthly basis, and getting that initial metric that you want to be able to analyze. From there, the other reports that I think are excellent, and I typically recommend clinic summary, clinic statistics, and employee sales statistics. And by the way, we'll send out a note to everybody on these specific reports that I would recommend. And what they're going to give you, like the clinic statistics report is excellent. It's going to show you, you know, total new patients. It's going to give you your accounts receivable, payments received. Gives you a lot of data in one snapshot, and then PVA scores to look at. No, I apologize. This is demo data out of my test system. So there's not a lot of actual numbers in here, but you can see in the columns that it's giving you a lot of that data that Raj and Sanjeev are talking about. The other one that, you know, the clinic summary report that I was mentioning, now this tends to be a pretty massive report, and there's a lot of data here, but, you know, you'll get some of those key metrics, such as, you know, total number of appointments, total number of assessments completed. And then at the bottom here, it also gives you per staff member, you can actually see what an individual's number of assessments completed, their sales, their number of appointments, and their PVA score are on a weekly basis. So that, again, giving you a lot of that key data that we're talking about without going through a bunch of different reports. And then the last one I mentioned is the employee sales report, or sales statistics, I should say. This one gives you, again, some really key information, you know, total appointment hours and total available hours, and then your efficiency score. And, you know, this one's excellent for showing you just, you know, how much of that schedule utilization's happening and at a snapshot. So, you know, trying to limit it to, you know, 3-4 reports that you're going to run to get all the data that we're talking about here, and figuring out which ones you like. And then, you know, obviously you've got your receivables report, you know, to be able to, or accounts receivable report here, sorry, to see that list and make sure that you're not letting people linger in their receivables too long.
Yeah, really good reports. And maybe type in the chat, are you using, or did you know about the clinic summary report? Put a 1 in the chat. If not, put a 0. Right? But I really love, and I'm glad we're doing this webinar because I see a lot of 0s, a couple of 1s, but yeah, go right after this call, check out the clinic summary report. Like Raj and I have been helping Juvonno, like what data should be in there. They build it really quickly. I'm sure they'd appreciate even more of your feedback, but that has a lot of data in it on those fundamental processes and systems. Okay. One thing I will add is I do a very similar meeting that Raj does, but just to add, that meeting for me is a status meeting, not a working session. So that meeting could be for me like 20 minutes, because all we're doing is identifying like where a leak could be. We're not trying to solve it, because I don't know, maybe it's just me. I find it takes the meeting like in 10 different directions, like off on a tangent. We go too deep. So I tell my team at the start, hey, this is a status meeting. We got 20 minutes. We're going through and be like, oh, there's a leak here. Okay, Lisa and Dan, you guys are going to meet like tomorrow for half an hour, figure out what's going on, right? And come up with, so we're booking like working sessions if we need it
Mhm.
later on in the week. So that meeting can be very short. We're just trying to find like we each pick a detective, like out of pop culture. Someone's like Carmen Sandiego, someone's like Inspector Gadget, and that kind of puts us in the right mind that we're just trying to find where the leak is, but we don't solve it. We just say, hey, you two are going to meet and figure it out and report back next week. Okay, so there's a difference between a status meeting and a working session in my mind. Okay.
Sanjeev, I think
Now,
somebody, Jessica asked on the chat. I can't respond to everybody, but it said she asked what's PVA, and I just wanted to say that means patient as an average. So on
yeah,
average, how many times is the like patient come visit your clinic?
yeah, 100%. So for every assessment, say I came to your clinic and I was assessed, I came in like 5 times, 5 treatment sessions. And then you look at all patients over a given period of time, say a month, and it gives you an average. But be very careful with PVA. Okay. To me, you can't use PVA to tell you exactly what's going on. It's a
Yeah,
guide.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have to look at
agreed.
a few other metrics, but it signals to you, it's just a signal, are patients staying committed to their plan of care, right? If someone has a PVA 2, that means on average, patients are only coming in twice. For an ortho clinic, that's weird. Like, how are you getting people better in 2 sessions? That's weird. So I'm going to look at a couple other metrics, or even go into Juvonno and look at some assessments and see how people are booking once a week,
Yeah.
or are they falling off? Like they've came twice and ghosted us, and like, oh my God, this guy has a frozen shoulder. How could that be?
I
Right?
think as
And
a sorry, I was just going to say to that, as a clinic director or even as a clinic owner, that's the best. Just looking at your Juvonno schedule and looking at those new assessments on other people's schedules and looking for that clock. Like there's a lot of cues that Juvonno provides that I can just get a picture to make a best decision. And then I look at the date of the clock, and is the date too far out or is the date soon? And you can make those assumptions based on just looking at those things, right? Is the money collected? There's a lot of things you can just look visually without having to run data, which it is data. It's just looking at it differently. And I think that's also important for those busy clinic directors and clinic owners, is to always be scanning the other therapists' like schedules and seeing what those
100%,
prompts on Juvonno are showing.
100%. The clinic summary report that Terry just showed just signals you is something wrong here, but you got to go and be that detective. Go and look a few cases, like Raj said. You'll get so much info. And what you're trying to do as we wrap up here, when we talk about actionable things you can do, is you're trying to decide what's the best use of my time, right? Most people are treating like a few days a week. So you only have a limited time to work on the business. And like, you got to decide, where am I going to spend my time? Oh, this clinician's having an issue with fall offs. Oh, I need to spend 2 hours with them or an hour with them and role play or look at cases together, right? So if I paint you a picture, the clinic summary report signals you something's not right. You got to look a little deeper into Juvonno data, and then you got to move your mind quickly to, hey, what do I need to do? Role play with this person, take a walk with them, look at cases with them, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But don't sit in the data. You got to move your
Yeah.
mind quickly to that assessment and the plan part of the SOAP note.
So somebody was just asking about patient drop-off. I like the patient drop-off report. I think it's quite powerful, and I always use it to the Excel detailed version. But that said, I believe it was Crystal was asking there. One of the other things for analyzing data in the Juvonno system is using the patient insights, the report builder. And I know that our training team will typically recommend using this because you can really customize the report. It does take a little bit more work. You've got to kind of select all your different filters and things. But I guess my answer to your question is, I think either works. I personally like the drop off, and I typically recommend the Excel detailed version of that specifically. But anyway, I just wanted to
Yeah.
answer it. Hopefully that helps, Crystal.
No, it's very helpful because even with my team, what I'm trying to do with them, because you have to teach people how to look at data most of the time. So I'm trying to create habits. So you should be going to this report like every week. So you get used to it, like create habit. Um, but what really helped me, I think we'll take some questions next, but what really helped me is that SOAP note. Okay, you do the objective, which is looking at these reports. Hey, something's not right here. You ask some subjective questions. The subjective questions are usually the same for me. Whose role is it? Like, who's responsible for this? Are they complaining? Are they overwhelmed? Um, do they actually know what tasks to do for this metric, like AR's common case? Is it blocked in their calendar? Are they actually doing those tasks? And do we need to retrain them? Okay, so every metric, I pretty much ask those five subjective questions. And if the answer comes back not sure or no, I know what my P is, my plan is, my task is. I gotta sit with them, or someone has to sit with them and talk to them why they're overwhelmed, look at their calendar, look at the task, or even retrain them. Okay, so you need to, that's why I like weekly, because you need to get in the habit of doing that. Okay, maybe give it a score out of 100 if that made sense. This is a system we're going through. Raj has shared a system. Terry has shared where you get this data. I've shared kind of how my methodology, but I want to make sure you guys get it and then make it your own, right? Like find your own system of how to analyze data and get to the actionable part.
Jessica asked a question around specific practitioners. Would there be a way to track if someone does vertigo, so it's 1 to 3 times versus somebody that does knee surgery and it's several times? I think that's where the employee sales statistic comes in. Like Jessica, for example, we have pelvic health physios that maybe don't see them as often. I'm a vestibular therapist as well. And I also do MSK ortho. So my PVA might be slightly lower. It might not be 8 on average. It might end up being 6. But that's a goal that I've then we'll talk about, right? That's the metric I create. So if you have a vestibular therapist and half their patients are vertigo patients and half their patients are MSK, then you can expect that their PVA might only be 5 or 4. That's okay. That's acceptable. But if you have like an MSK practitioner that's doing knee ops, then their PVA should probably be around 8 to 10. So you can look at the employee sales statistics, maybe over the clinic stuff to be specific into each employee based on what, conditions they treat. Ideally, also, that's why Sanjeev said it's not just PVA, because it should just respond to revenue. Efficiency, we'll speak to that as well, like how often are they booked? So even if they're only seeing patients, 3 or 4 times, they typically still be booked in their schedule. So there's PVA just points a picture, but there's so many other things to look at. And I like the employee sales statistics to like look into specific types of therapists and what their learning deficiencies might be.
Yeah, that was a great question and response. And it got me kind of thinking maybe the next webinar, we just look at that. Because like I have a baseball card for every clinician. I call it the baseball card.
Yeah.
And that like tells you directly, this person's not getting enough assessment. This person's not getting enough hours. They're not utilized enough. They have a follow-up problem. Because every therapist, I don't know if you found this, they have their own hiccup.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
Or they're getting too many assessments, right? Like efficiency might look great, like they might be fully booked, but they're taking all your assessments, right? Which is also a problem. So it's like you can't just look at one number on one list. You have to look at like all to paint a picture, right? But again, if they're only taking assessments, their revenue is going to be lower because assessments typically, we charge less than return visits. So it kind of you do have to look at the whole scale, right? Versus just one thing per employee.
Yeah, it would be great if we could, maybe the next one, Terry, is like grab some 2 or 3 employee like reports.
Yeah.
And we look at it and analyze it and we try and figure out what's going on, right? With the help of the chat.
I love
what would we
Pat's
do?
question.
Go for it.
I mean, I don't think it matters, Pat, to be honest, right? Like employees and ICs, they're employees in our company. I have some ICs too, but the expectation is laid out that this is data driven and you do have to track your data, right? I mean, you're working for me in all intensive purposes. I do believe most people are, my personal opinion, most people are employees with IC contracts, but they're employees because you're controlling the way that they work. And so I don't think it matters. If an IC is giving you difficulty because they say they're an IC and they don't want their data tracked, then probably, they're not meant for your team. Because I think you do have to set up the expectations that we are a metric-based company and that this is what we track. Whether your employee IC shouldn't matter. We all want to be successful. Your success and our success are linked in together. And I think the metrics matter. If that answers your question, Pat.
Yeah, and sometimes with employees, it's more black and white. Like you can say, hey, you're going to book time for an hour. I'm going to retrain you on X. With an IC, you may not be able to do that, right?
If they pull the IC card on you.
If they pull the IC card on, you have to kind of inspire them that this is going to be
Yeah.
valuable to you,
Yeah.
this training, like, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to help you.
And that might
right?
go into the deeper conversations around how clinic cultures and stuff are set up, which we know is a whole nother maybe 1 day webinar that we can
Well,
discuss. But
well, Alex did ask a good question in the chat. If a practitioner doesn't want to be tracked, like they don't want to see their metrics,
they don't want to
and
be
like,
accountable.
what do you
Yeah.
do? What do you do in that situation? So maybe Raj, like, well, I'm sure you've come across this. So share some experience there.
I'll be honest, actually, I don't come across it because I don't hire them.
There you go.
Yeah. You know what? Like when we recruit, we just say, like, we show them the dashboard and we say, do you want to be tracked? We track your data because it's going to be successful. No, I know you're laughing, but it's like, I don't want to bring somebody in, try to coach them, and then be like, I don't like metrics anyways. It's just a waste of time for everybody. My hour of my directors, my hours with my time, like, it's just a waste, right? I'm trying to make my time efficient. So when we recruit, we go right in saying, we track your data. This is what your dashboard looks like. On onboarding, we show them this is what your dashboard looks like. This is what these numbers mean. I do an onboarding call with all the new grads that we hire, and this is what it looks like. And is this going to motivate you or demotivate you, right? And if it's going to motivate you, you're going to join our team. And then we also build, like, the reason why we build bonuses, right? Like, if they're hitting some of these metrics, they also get money. So they want to see those metrics, because those metrics is going to mean I'm doing better on the other side. I'm going to make some money.
I love what you said. You show that during the interview stage, right? To set the expectation. And the only thing I'll add is, like, all these metrics that we're reviewing, and I've told hundreds of therapists this, all we're really doing is measuring patient experience. From one form or another. It's like energy. You can have potential energy, kinetic energy, electromagnetic, like, they're just measuring energy. So in this case, we're just measuring patient experience, right? So your PVA is patient experience, your fall off list is patient experience, like how many assessments you have is patient experience, your utilization, patient experience. And we want to provide the best patient experience. So if you can frame it in terms of what's best for the patient, I think you'll get a lot of buy-in from people who are not metrics people, right? That we're doing all this to give a great experience. And if you give someone a great experience, what happens? They're more committed to their plan of care, and
Yeah.
someone more committed to their plan of care is going to get better outcomes. They get their outcomes, they tell their friends, and the whole cycle starts over again. And we need to track that.
Totally agree. I think great therapists will naturally have great metrics. I don't think, like, I mean, there were a lot of great therapists that existed before EMR came in.
Yeah.
And then once EMR came in, like, I was a therapist, I was using paper charting, and I had some members on my team that have gone from paper to EMR, and their metrics are high because they've always delivered a great experience, right? So even before metrics were used as a tool to coach, it kind of was already there. So I think the basis metrics are great talking points, and they're great to, like, objectively show data, especially now in a data-driven world with so much going on. But ultimately, like, a great therapist, a great empathetic person who wants to learn, wants to get better, who wants to make a difference and execute treatment plans will always organically have good metrics.
You know it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, we still have some time here. I wanted to ask, hey, what key metric will you begin focusing on after today's webinar? So maybe type that in the chat. Is there a metric that came to mind? And if you type that in the chat, we can even discuss, like, how would we influence that metric? Like, what actionable things would you do to move that metric in the direction you want? Okay. So Kathy, you said clinic summary. So that's a report in Juvonno, but is there a metric that you're like, hey, I should be tracking this? So Alex wrote PVA, and maybe I'll throw it to you, Raj. So now that we're tracking PVA, like, how would you influence it to move in the right direction? Like, what actionable things would you do if you saw PVA was low for a therapist?
I would definitely, like, audit treatment, not audit treatment plans. Audit sounds harsh, but I would speak to the therapist around the treatment planning and what type of treatment plannings they're giving. First, are they actually communicating that, like, what's the goal that they're looking for, right? Like, that see as you go mentality, you might not actually be building up a high PVA. But if you're creating treatment plans on 8, right? Let's start with that first. If your treatment plan say 8, but you're only hitting 5, then maybe there's, like, something happening at the end of the plan of care around, like, your clinical skills, right? So this exposes a communication issue or a clinical skill issue, right? Because the communication issue will expose whether you're actually giving a treatment plan. The clinical skill issue will tell you whether you're executing the treatment plan.
Yeah, I do something very similar. Just to add a little bit more formality, I will work with that clinician for 4 weeks. I give myself like 4 weeks.
Oh,
They're
okay.
almost on they're almost on my like business treatment plan or PVA treatment plan. So I'm going to meet with them once or twice a week, usually twice a week, 15 minutes each, Monday, Thursday, and then for 4 weeks. And I try and like I might bring another therapist in
Yeah.
for them to share, but they're on like a plan of care themselves for PVA,
Gotcha.
right? So, and again, imagine you just pinpointed one therapist a month
Yeah.
that needs help in some metric or another. After like a year, like that's 8 to 10 therapists you probably helped improve in some
Yeah.
form or fashion. And it'll show in their metrics.
Sanjeev, there's been a couple of people that posted in here. Patient drop off seems to be kind of a key metric that a lot of people are going to be analyzing. And in my experience, it seems to be that there's two aspects to that. And I'm curious about your feedback on this. One is, at the end of an appointment, the communication between the clinician and the patient about rebooking and booking those future appointments. And then obviously as the patient's leaving, they've got an interaction with the administrator where there's an opportunity to rebook and that. But I'm curious on a training perspective, when you're working with the clinics, how do they action? They're looking at this data, they're seeing that their drop-offs are high. What do they action to actually try to fix that?
Yeah, we definitely look at this weekly. It's actually like the second thing I kind of test after the phone, because having fall off, which the definition to me is the patient doesn't have at least one appointment booked in the future. That's our definition, fall off. Or some people have other definitions, but essentially the patient's not booked. Okay, in the future. That's a red flag. That's a fall off to me. So two things you can do, and I'd love to hear Roger you do too, but first thing is preventing them. So what Raj said about treatment planning, providing an amazing experience at assessment so they buy into the treatment planning, you walk them to the front, they're not there for their shoulder, they're here for gardening, like all those things prevent fall offs, okay? But you can never eliminate fall offs because someone might fall off unrelated to your care. Their kids are sick, they went on vacation, their job's stressful, okay? They're shift worker, okay, like a nurse or something. So then you have to have a net, what I call a fall off net. It's essentially a system. And what we do is every week we print out on a piece of paper the therapist's fall off list. Okay. And we give them a physical piece of paper. We do not email it to them because it gets drowned out by 100 other emails they haven't opened. Okay. Then they write beside each patient name, no discharge, need to call back. They hand it back to the admin, and the admin then do their thing and they call all these fall-offs and try and book them back in. And so that's our system. And I would love if the clinician would do fall-off calls. And I do recommend it if they're not busy. If they're not busy, they should be doing the calls. But typically they're busy. So we position it as like a support system for them. Then an administrator will call, and we have a script for that as well. But that's our system, preventative system, and then the net. Maybe Raj, do you do something similar?
Yeah, 100%. We do it by paper because I've tried over email, and email just gets drowned out. You don't get it back on paper. They give it back at the end of their shift. And the other thing we do on the administrative side too, we use one of the Juvonno features, the follow-up feature. So if an administrator takes a call in which a patient has to cancel because of an emergency or something, there's already a script that goes into place to be like, oh, okay, you don't have your next appointment booked. Would you like to book that in now? If that doesn't get booked, then we actually book a follow-up to be like, okay, we'll call you in a week to book your next one. And then that goes into the follow-up dashboard, which will remind the front desk that at that moment to call up the patient. So again, that's part of that net on the administrative side to catch those cancellations that might come in that need to be booked out.
Yeah. So I'm like fall off agnostic. Like I don't care what the process is. Like as long as it's working and being done. Yeah. And that's one of those things on the clinic summary report you check every week. Hey, who's responsible for fall offs? Is it being done? Is it blocked in their calendar to do it? Are they overwhelmed? They're not doing it. It's the same questions, right? Every week. Sorry, you're going to share something, Raj?
No. It was same thing. Like, you have to analyze, you have to put something in place and then analyze whether that actually works, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then if that doesn't work, change,
Change,
right? So if
iterate. Yeah.
email patient drop off didn't work, it doesn't mean the drop off's not working. It just means maybe try a different way of delivering that message. So that's when we went back to paper. And paper actually surprisingly had way better turnaround. Therapists were getting
Yeah.
it back on the time.
Every system I've ever put in, the success rate of me thinking about what the system should be and then implementing, the success rate has been 0. I've never gotten it right. You always
Yeah.
have to iterate.
Keep trying
You
it. Yeah.
always have to iterate, right? So,
Yeah.
but I love what you guys wrote in the chat, because the PVA, the treatment planning, the follow-up procedures, if you get just 3 of those right, treatment planning and follow-up, that's going to take care of a huge percentage of the leaks, right? So it's just fundamental. Like, you have a follow-up, you got a huge hole in your boat. If you're not doing treatment planning, you're asking people to fall off, right? And then the other only one I add is, like, I'm very like biased to the phone. It's something I watch like every day, our answer rates, our booking rates, because we're putting so much effort into our reputation, our community. I know, Raj, you guys do tons of community stuff, right? Your marketing. And if you're not picking up the phone or booking enough, that's like shooting yourself in the foot. And it's the clinician caseloads downstream that suffer in reality, right? When that, it's just that like fulcrum in the business. All right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we got a few more minutes,
Yes.
but we can wrap up there. I don't know, Terry, if you want to share
Yeah.
here.
I was going to say, I think I got to be honest. I'm not sure how much time we had allotted for this in the beginning. I'm not sure if we've got time left or if we've gone over. But regardless, I wanted to say thank you to you both. I think this was really good, excellent information. Raj, really appreciate you joining today. For all of the uh, participants that are on this webinar who use Juvonno, if you have any questions about different reports, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. Even setting up your reporting dashboard, one of the things that I find, Juvonno is a great system. One of the things that I find is it has a massive amount of a massive amount of reports. And so one of the things that I like to do is to, clean up the reports page, turn off the reports you're not using so that it's very streamlined, so all of your staff are using the exact same reports, getting the exact same data, and you're able to do that efficiently. So I'm more than happy to help with that as well. But if you have specific data points that you want to analyze and you're struggling to figure out which report gets the best or would be the best for that, reach out and I'll help you out for sure.
Yeah, even hit up the Juvonno campus Facebook page. I know, like, I'm on there. I think Raj, you're there. Like, we can keep the conversation going about metrics. But yeah, like, I was just getting started. I was getting heated there, like, I can chatty Kathy, so we'll probably talk another couple hours. Better we stop.
Well, and as kind of as I said at the beginning of this, is that this topic can get heated, can get very exciting. There's a lot to it, so I think from a Juvonno perspective, we'll probably plan a few follow-up webinars to this, and we'll focus on some specific areas and delve deeper into them. And we'll be sending out follow-ups to everybody that was interested in this as well. So appreciate everybody joining, and yeah, it's a fun topic. I love analyzing statistics and digging into reports myself, so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And thanks, Terry and team, for inviting us. And Raj, always great to see you. And hopefully I'll see everyone in the Juvonno campus Facebook group.